Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood. Get over yourself with the freaking black and white and red things. Like, come on. This was a fun comic book. I hope they saved a lot of money on not having a lot of colorist activity on this, but nonetheless, I actually enjoyed this. There were 3 stories on here. Anubis Rex by Jonathan Hickman and Chris Bachalo. They're the storytellers, whatever. So White Yet So Dark, and that's by Marueda Ayodele. I always butcher their names. And Doton Akande. And then The End by Mark Guggenheim and George Fornes. Maybe it's Jorge Fornes. Anyway, the letters are by VC's Corey Petit, and Bill Sienkiewicz does the cover art. A couple of variant covers out there. It is what it is. So I got this comic book for free, which was freaky. I'm like, why? And I thought it was because I reviewed somebody's book before. See, that the guys who do the middle story in here, So White Yet So Dark, I actually reviewed their comic books. My Grandfather Was a God. Now, if you ever like the Storm from the X-Men stuff about her being an Orisha, well, the actual Orisha, these guys actually talk about this stuff. So you should go check out My Grandfather Was a God. Because, yeah, actually really good stuff. So they sent me this comic book, and then when I got the comic book, I looked at it, I was like, that's why they wanted me to read it, because they actually did some work in it. So, all it being what it is, I'm still giving this a very fair review. Case in point, the first story sucks. The first story in this one is so bad. Anubis Rex. And it's the Hickman story. So, of course, it's got to have something to do with sci-fi. He's off in space and he's doing his thing and whatever. It's like, dude, what are you freaking doing? There's a story that doesn't make any sense. This is basically a futuristic Batman. Oh, that's right. I said Batman. This is not Moon Knight. This is a futuristic version of Batman in something that kind of sort of resembles a Moon Knight costume. All he does is the old Bruce Wayne stuff where he's like, He barely ever talks. He's mostly just grunting. Christ, you get more dialogue out of Clint Eastwood than this freaking issue. Anyway, he's trying to save a little girl. Geez, sounds a lot like Batman Dark Knight Returns, right? Against some big Anubis thing. The future was destroyed, and the Egyptian gods were the only things that actually counted, and blah, blah, yakety smackety. Have yourself another glass of OJ, son. It's good for you. None of this stuff was actually any good. I hated this first story, a Hickman story. Hate to say it, but I think that Jonathan Hickman, I think he's used all the fingers on his monkey's paw, because his work is just not good nowadays. It's horrible, and it is what it is. Moving on. So White, Yet So Dark by Marueda and Doton. These guys, I've said, they have a lot of talent, both of them together. The storytelling style plus the art style that these two were able to bring forth to a comic book. Spider-Man was one of the 2 other characters who were in this story. So you had Moon Knight, you had Spider-Man, and then another character. I'm not going to tell you who the character was, because I'm not here to spoil anything. But this was such a good story. It's not just the idea that it was fun. There's a lot of bow running around. But, you know, one of the problems I have with comic books nowadays is a lot of the people want to take a shortcut and just make it funny. And that's usually by making fun of comic books. You know, The Big Bang Theory is a big time show, right? And I don't know why. I do know why, but at the same time, it's like, all it is making fun of nerds. Now, look, I get it. All right, I get it. I'm okay with it because I wasn't just a nerd. By the way, nerd is a weird word. I learned this later in life. It's such a weird word. I don't know any other language where there's a pejorative about smart people, right? How does that make sense? Whatever. Anyway, us geeks who enjoyed the good stuff here, you know, the fun comic books and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. I get it that they're going to make fun of it, and it is what it is. But when you take a situational sitcom comedy like that just makes fun of geek culture as a whole, but with reverence. There's a lot of reverence for it. You know, the characters are somewhat self-aware of how geeky they are, but they still go for it. They still enjoy it. So it's fun to do that. But so many other comic books, they take that and they don't really get what they're doing with the Big Bang Theory. So they just turn around and start making fun of themselves. They start making fun of the story and, worst of all, the characters and the history of the characters. And it's like, dude, you've lost the point. You've completely lost the plot. I do not want a silly hero or a hero that thinks that he's an idiot or a hero that's self-aware of just how this couldn't possibly work in the real world. I'm not interested in the real world. Was it Earth 1218? It was like, no. I live in that Earth. All right? No. What would be cool is being in Earth 2016, or at least reading about it, where there are superheroes and there are supervillains to fight. So, a comic book that can make jokes but not make fun of itself, to me, very rare nowadays. But that's exactly what you find here. Yeah, they bought me the comic book. I could care less. 2 squirts, all right? The point is, I read this comic book. I read this issue. I read this portion, So White Yet So Dark, and I genuinely had a good time with it. Spider-Man is a character who will make jokes, will make sometimes inside jokes, and they can be funny if delivered the right way. And that's exactly what happened here. It was genuinely fun reading this comic book. There were parts where I can laugh at the situation, not at the characters, not at the story, not at the storyline, not at the history of either this character or any other character or the Marvel Universe or comic books as a whole, in part or in whole. There was just simply situational humor. And I found myself laughing at that. And there was a good reason for it. In the end, suddenly you realize what the favor was supposed to be. And it's something that all of us would ask also. So a very, very intelligent comic book that was fun to read. I enjoyed this story, So White Yet So Dark. These guys, I don't know how they were able to do a free comic book that they put out for people to read for free, and then all of a sudden they get brought in by Marvel. I'm hoping these two actually stay together. I would love to see these two actually doing a comic book going forward. Very proud of Marvel and the people at Marvel for figuring out who these guys are, and surprise, really good stuff. Anyway, the final story is called The End. Very good to see that. And by being called The End, when you see the first panel of the first page of this portion, this third portion, this final story for this comic book, it says The End. But you know that it's called The End. So you can read it going forward and go, okay, what's going on? And you get a little confused. About 2 pages in, I realized that something was wrong. It didn't take too many panels more to realize that the whole story was backwards. But they delivered it like it is. Hey, listen, if you've never seen the original Memento, I know they did a remake of it. Fie upon them, a pox upon them for doing a remake of that incredible movie. I had never saw it. I have no interest in seeing it. Forget about it. I saw the original one. I'm more than happy to watch the original one again. Really good movie of a story that actually goes backwards, and why it goes backwards. Great story. And that's what you had here by Mark Guggenheim and Jorge Fornes. Really incredible story, because when you're finished reading it, you're going to go backwards and you're going to realize how to read it. And by the way, it's not page by page backwards. It's panel by panel backwards. So you're going to read the bottom right panel first, then move left, then go up to the right. You get it? And go completely backwards and read the entire comic book. And it actually makes sense. It makes just enough sense going this way. But when you go back and you read it backwards, it's like, well, that was fairly simple, but very enjoyable also. So disappointed in Hickman in this. Even Chris Bachalo, who's an amazing artist, Maybe he was told to draw like this, where it was hard to see anything, to understand anything that was happening. I couldn't tell you what Moon Knight looked in this first story, Anubis Rex. It's a dumb name, too. But the other 2 stories in this were actually brilliant in their own way. I genuinely enjoyed them, and it makes the whole book, in my humble opinion, worth buying. I believe it's $10 American, because that's what they sent me. This was good. This was really, really good. And I was happy to be able to read this. Was I going to read it otherwise? Maybe. Maybe. But this cinched the deal, so you don't always have to buy me a comic book. But anyway, this was good, and I do highly recommend grabbing these. I know some people who didn't like Guggenheim on his X-Men Gold run. He was doing Gold, right? I hate to tell you this. There was some really amazing parts in there. It was a really, really good story. It was the gold standard, so to speak. It really was. That being what it is. Guggenheim still has it. He's still got that movie theater approach, that screenwriter's way of writing. If you guys are familiar with Guggenheim, he's done a lot of cinema work, television work, and whatnot, you know? He knows how to put together a script like nobody's business. Is everything going to be a hit? Probably not. But most of what he does, very well thought out, very, very by the numbers, and you could tell exactly what was happening, or what is happening in his work as it goes on. As far as Murewa and Doughton, I look forward to seeing a whole lot more from these guys. I'm wondering what story at some point these guys are going to be working on. I really, like I said, hope that they do continue working together. Really fun stuff. Guys, I'm done. I'm done with praising the stuff. Go judge it for yourself. Go to your comic book store and just flip through it and see what I'm talking about. You're going to enjoy the work. I'll talk to you guys later. Professor Bill, first, like the video, watch an ad. Now, Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.